This is Oft Off Topic, a show where two men with the attention spans of a squirrel try and fail to stay on topic with today's subject. Where will their oral meanderings take us? Well, stick around and listen, because today's Oft Off Topic is... Venture Brothers, radiant as the blood of the baboon heart. A long title that's confusing if you haven't seen the movie, but makes perfect sense if you have seen the movie. We recently got the movie and watched it together because me and Nate love the Venture Brothers show. We love everything about it, but that kind of makes sense because we are literally the target demographic for them. If you got the creators of the Venture Brothers together and like, hey, what's your target demographic? They would point at me and Nate and be like, them. Those guys right there. We don't know them, but them.
Yeah, I try to tell my daughters about it. Like, oh yeah, we're watching. I'm watching this movie. I told them I was making this podcast about it, and of course they've maybe heard of it. I'm like, well, it is hilarious. It's awesome. However, while you might think it's funny at times, you wouldn't really like.
You don't get the impact it had on our childhood Saturday morning cartoons, and
not just that, but a lot of it wouldn't even land. Because they would reference, in the TV show they reference Johnny Quest. They've never heard of Johnny Quest. Who's Johnny Quest? So
they know spoofs of Johnny Quest more than they know actual Johnny Quest.
Honestly, at this stage, they might not even get spoofs of Johnny Quest anymore, unless it's like on their YouTube channels. I mean, really, it's Johnny Quest has fallen so far out of like the public consciousness. I mean, he's not gone, but
he's kind of like along the lines of I don't know, Little Lotta or those kind of characters.
I get, yeah,
like Golden Age comic book characters.
Unless they're like very nostalgic, Gen Z doesn't know about Johnny Quest.
Yeah. Eventually, they'll make liars out of us. In like 10 years, Johnny Quest will be all the rage. Everybody will love him.
Well, but it wouldn't be because of the classic Johnny Quest. It would be because of some like reboot. Like Johnny Quest, except now he's in space.
Yeah. People might get into the old shows in a ironic kind of way.
I guess, but it's kind of frowned upon to have like basically a manservant who's,
And that's why people would like it, because it's offensive and kitsch.
Right.
Yep. Be like, you can't find this kind of stuff on TV anymore.
Or they do a race reversal that would really piss people off. Like, what? The servant can't be the white guy.
Haji is a white dude, just a dippy white dude. Well,
Haji Quest.
Yeah. Well, howdy, Senor Quest. This sure is a funny adventure we're on. That would be good. So
I'd watch it.
Yeah, I would watch it too. That does sound like something that would show up on Adult Swim at some point.
Oh, absolutely.
So this movie takes place like right after the final season 7. That we were supposed to get season 8, but they said nope, you get a movie instead. And this picks up pretty close right afterwards. And one thing I really like that they did in this movie, they didn't do that whole thing they do on these sometimes, where it's like, hey, we're going to do a recap and relearn you up on everything that's happened, and spend half the movie telling us stuff we already knew. They're literally just like straight to the point. They're like, all right, cool. We're just picking up and we're going. If you're watching this, you already know about the Venture Brothers, and we do not have to re-explain everything, which is smart because they didn't.
They probably do that as a necessity. Just, okay, we can't really afford to do a whole recap. Just, we're here. Let's go.
As far as recaps they did do that one scene where Hank shows back up at the compound, and they kind of go through, he's like looking around, they go through all the little scenes throughout the seasons, like, the Mecha Shiva and looking for the dog Scamp. It's like, hey, that was kind of a nice little callback to various things that happened.
True.
Yeah, especially, I don't know, I just got a kick out of it at the very beginning where it shows them putting around on their little hover bikes looking for Scamp, because eventually they found Scamp, and he was turned inside out, and it was very traumatic for them.
I love that little bit from Dr. Vetch. He's like, don't you remember when Hank ran off thinking he could do this by himself?
Right. He went to the North Pole to find Santa Claus because he didn't get a go-kart. And it's like, oh yeah, he did wind up dead in a ditch that time.
Oh yeah. Whoops.
Yeah. And Dean's just like, oh yeah, that's right. We're clones. We die all the time.
And I'm glad. Yeah. I mean, I remember watching the last season. I thought I got the impression that Hank had forgiven Dean. He's like, it was all over. But I guess he hadn't, obviously, because he was still
well, sometimes people like to bring up stuff from the past randomly, be like, hey, I'm bitter about this still.
Right.
But they did kind of have like a nice coming back together at the end, though. The brotherly love is still there.
And he got the shit kicked out of him. Maybe
not
in real life, but
by all the imaginary Deans out there. Wait, Hank, Dean? I always get them mixed up now and then.
Yeah, as do I. That's why I hesitate for a second.
Yeah, no, it's just, if we're wrong, we're wrong. We'll get right half the time, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I also like the fact that they had Brick Frog, one of the more obscure characters, kind of be like a main guy in it. Not really a main guy, but he showed up. It's like Brick Frog, and they're like, who? Brick Frog, and all of a sudden everybody's like, oh yeah, Brick Frog. He's a wonderful guy. He's the guy who's dressed as a frog and throws bricks.
Well, I really loved was Dr. Girlfriend's description of him. He's like, oh, his was especially is he carries a brick. He says his name real loud.
Yeah, yeah, that is his whole thing. Because he was one of the characters that applied for like the supervillain team, I believe, when Phantom Limb was putting together his supervillain team.
Oh yeah, I think.
Yeah, I think that's where he came from. There's also Murder Bear there, which is a dude in just a big bear costume carrying a machete. And he just stands there totally quiet. Everybody's like, so you are? And he just stares, breathing heavily. Like, okay, you're freaking us out. Please go away. Oh, yeah, I should know, too. We're going to have a lot of spoilers in this because we're just going to openly talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're not going to dance around anything because there's just a lot of fun stuff talking about. One subtle little thing that I absolutely loved was the vampire hunter. His car's name was the Blood Vessel.
Oh, I didn't pick that up. That's all.
I didn't pick that up. Yeah, license plate Blood Vessel because, blood vessels carry blood. Vampire. Ha, it's a blood joke. That's good.
You must know it's good.
Yeah. I also like the when they're sitting around the villains or the League of Calamitous Intent, and they're like, how many is a few? I don't know. More than a couple? Well, how many is a lot? I don't know. Maybe several?
It's bits like that make the show great.
It really is. Because it's conversations like that you have in real life. And I always assumed a couple is 2. A few I always assumed was 3 or 4. Several is like 5 to 6 or 7. And I guess a lot is more than that.
Yeah, I would guess. That sounds about right.
Yeah, it sounds about right. I know a couple is 2, so you go from there. And I don't know, a few is more than a couple. Several is more than a few. I don't know where a heaping falls into that category. Probably somewhere between several and a lot.
Reminds me of the day I was talking to my daughter about what would you do, or what would happen if we threw a pebble out the window? I'm like, well, it'd probably bounce. And then she's like, we were talking about whether she was like, oh, skip like the water. I'm like, no, that's skipping rocks. It's not just throw out the window. And if you throw out a pebble, it's small enough it wouldn't break. You'd think it would just kind of bounce on the ground. And then we actually looked up the names of sizes of rocks.
There's between a rock, a boulder, a stone, and a.
Well, apparently with they actually have names like for the sizes, and the smallest is clay, which doesn't make sense to me. It's like, well, it makes sense because I thought clay was like consistency, not necessarily the size.
Yeah, but I think clay is actually like micro-sized little rocks that are easily formable.
So then there's clay, then there's silt, which is a step up above that.
Yeah.
Then there's sand. Okay, so they're talking. I was looking at a picture of clay. So clay is teeny tiny. Okay, I got you.
Yeah. Clay is just like microscopic dirt that's like stones that's really easy to form.
We were talking in the car, so I wasn't exactly in a place where we can really make sense of it. It was in the car rider line as we're waiting. I quickly look at my phone. So, but now that I'm actually talking to you, okay, it makes sense. Clay is teeny tiny silt, because the thing that tipped me off was the sand. In this little chart they have, sand is bigger than silt and clay. I'm like, okay, I got it. Granule's a little bit bigger than sand, then pebble is bigger than that, and then cobble, and then boulder. So,
cobble, that's a term you don't hear much anymore. Cobble.
No, you don't.
Cobblestone. You hear from cobble together, I guess, but not just as in rocks.
Well, yeah.
That's a word we need to bring back, cobble.
Well, cobblestone, Minecraft.
Yeah, that's true. I don't really play Minecraft, but
neither I used to once upon a time, but that time is long past.
I kind of wanted to get into Minecraft, but never did. It's one of those. If I was at the right age, man, I would have been totally into that. I have a feeling. Because I've seen the younger people on Minecraft, and boy, howdy, they can whip out something impressive in a shockingly little amount of time.
I was into it for a while, but I never did any multiplayer stuff. I just would play. It was on the Xbox 360, if that tells you anything. And that was before they started getting really fancy with it. So I could get on there and play. And basically, I was doing survival mode. So I wouldn't be like free play where it's just like, ta-da, I have a castle. I actually, I mined the rocks and I put it in the furnace and I made it into this.
You're like those kids and they're just skipping ahead to all the stuff. I do it the proper way. I'd actually pull out my pickaxe and I get to work.
Well, there's creative mode where you can literally just like.
Oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
So yes, I did it the old-fashioned way, but I also had no enemies. So because it's one thing if I'm on there with other people, but if you're by yourself, you spend hours building a fucking castle, and then you go down to the bottom of your castle, and there happens to be, those evil penises rolling around, and it explodes and takes out half your castle. That's upsetting.
Well, now you know exactly what it's like being in the life of Rusty Venture, because that's happens to his base all the time, or his lab. People just show up and destroy it, and he's forced to rebuild it. And that seems kind of like a pain in the butt life for him.
I kind of forgot about that. Like when he shows up in the end, he goes like, "I'm gonna go back home." When he goes home, and the building is gone, I'm like, "Oh right,
yeah, everything got kind of blown up." And then they moved to New York.
Yeah, I couldn't remember how that happened, but I remember it happened.
Honestly, off the top of my head, I really don't remember either. It happened in like season 6, I believe, because that's when they moved to New York, or season 7 was when they moved to New York, I believe.
Yeah,
with Rusty's brother, Jonas Venture Jr. Oh, apparently there's a scene with Jonas Sr. at one point. I was looking up facts about the movie, and not many out there. In fact, just this one. I guess there was a scene with Jonas Sr., the dad, when the one lady was trying to get her invisibility taken away. I guess it's Jonas Sr. having a meeting with somebody, and that person is supposed to be Stanley Kubrick, and they're talking about faking the moon landing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's just like a little half-second blurb. Oh, another half-second blurb that was kind of cool. I almost feel like they're trying to squeeze in as many characters from the show as they could, because for a half a second when she was talking about the Guild of Calamus Intent, there's a scene where David Bowie is beating to death the previous leader with a hammer.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah. It was like, hey, there's David Bowie. Neat. They got him in this too. David Bowie, the ultimate bad guy.
Yes. Well, remember they on his original show he was, but he wasn't, because if I remember correctly, they had a little like thing pop up and say David Bowie look like, yeah, sounded like not actually David Bowie.
Did they?
I think so.
Really? They might have. I just assumed it was David Bowie.
No, it wasn't David Bowie.
Yeah. That was just I like the world where David Bowie could actually shapeshift.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah. Well, that would make sense if he was a shapeshifter, just being like, yeah, I want to be like David Bowie. Right. Oh, another weird little thing that I picked up, a little side note. When they have the helper home thing, the helper bot little speaker, and they first fire it up, the song that's playing is actually the Jackets song by Shallow Gravy from season like 3 or 4, where Dermot and Hank are singing, Gene, jacket, track, jacket, down, jacket, jackets. You probably don't remember that song. It had a music video and everything.
I do not remember the song.
Yeah, they played a remix of that for the in that movie too. That's actually kind of catchy too. Turns out Shallow Gravy actually has an album. It's just remixes of the Jacket song, but still, they have an album.
I mean, hell, why not?
Yeah, right.
More power to them.
Yeah, exactly. I do kind of wonder, storyline-wise, how all the bad guys never heard of Arch, even though they seem like one of the biggest global bad guy things ever.
And then at the very end, it seems like she's like, "Oh, there's no Arch. I would just do this."
I know. It seems like it's like, "Oh, I just did this." I was like, "But how?" I mean, you have like teleporting. You can just like beam in tanks, whatever you want, or guns, and
yeah, like looks like you've got things pretty well on hand. Why the hell do you need? Yeah, I wrote down initially when they first showed up, like, "Oh, okay, this is going to be a battle between new versus old villainy." Old villainy being, kind of like the giant punching glove or.
Yeah.
Some other kind of ridiculous.
You guys have all this fancy technology, and all we have is a boxing glove on the end of a rusty spring.
Yeah, I mean, because they even showed it when they raided that one dude's house. It was like it was a military precision. They came up, they blew it in, they went their guns blazing and wasted everybody. Versus
as opposed to Mark when he goes to invade and they shoot that hole in there that's his logo, and they're like, "Oh, we can't fit through that."
Yeah.
Yeah, the League of Calamitous Intent is so incompetent in comparison.
And then they bail on him. When he signed that thing without looking, I assumed they were going to try to trap him in some kind of like legal clauses. Like, oh, that's how they're going to get him with bureaucracy.
I thought they were going to make it so he's basically an indentured servant and owed them ton of money. It's like, hey, for every time you ordered a soldier, that's $1 million you got to pay back. Because it did seem like they had a pretty big budget. It's like, hey, order as many things as you want.
I mean, I maybe if they had a full season to play with it, but they didn't. They have what they had, and I guess maybe there was a clause in there, but you're just guessing. There's a clause in there saying, "Oh yeah, well, you signed this, but we can back at any time." So I don't know. It's just kind of I was expecting more from that little thing, just because that show has led me to believe, things are deeper than they need to be or than they could be. But I'm not necessarily complaining because the movie was amazing. But they just didn't.
Oh, another touch that I liked was the anti-heroes who is like, hey, we all want to live in an abandoned factory or a warehouse, but we can't afford the rent for that, so we all come here and split it. It's like, well, that makes a lot of sense too. You just have your own little cubicle inside of an old warehouse. And also the Punisher knockoff kind of gave me a chuckle with a skeleton strapped to his front.
Yeah, I mean, I got that. It was kind of, part of me rolled my eyes. I'm like, oh, come on.
I just want to know whose skeleton that is strapped to the front of him. But I would like to think it was the Punisher #1 and he's #2, and it's like a killing succession kind of thing.
The best knockoff for Punisher I ever saw was on a Tick, without question.
Oh, is that the dude who is always like crying? He's just so full of anger and hatred.
Yeah.
His eyes are just rolling. He's like, coming, just shooting. Like, do you need a hug? He's like, yes, mommy. Tick Venture Brothers crossover is the one thing we always need.
Well, sadly, they'll never happen.
No, but you never know. It could potentially. Because Ben Edlund is friends with the Venture Brothers guys, so.
Well, that makes sense. Their humor is similar.
Yeah, he actually helped them out with the first season, I believe, or at least with the pilot episode, which is why it kind of does smack of Ben Edlund humor at times.
One of my favorite lines from Tick is, I'm not even sure if they said it on the cartoon, maybe it was just in the comic, but he's like, so when talk about ninjas, he's like, ninjas? I thought they just stood around, got sucked up in jet engines.
Yeah, that was just in the comic books, not in the TV, sadly. One thing I love is the multiverse implications they have in this one too, where it's like, hey, my buddy needs a liver. I'm just going to warp over into another reality and steal this dude's liver, which is horrifying if you think of it from the dude who owned the liver standpoint. You're just sitting there minding your own business. All of a sudden, some dude teleports in. Is like, I need your liver.
And obviously, he just takes it fresh. He's like,
he just yanked it right out of that dude. Just went on his merry way.
Well, can't use this, and just toss it aside.
Yeah, he didn't even take it back to the poor dude. He's just like, oh yeah, that's right. Stuff goes inside out when you go through the multiverse sometimes. Yeah. And also Dermot, the security guard, where he's like, hey, I'm not officially part of OSI, but I do have a super soaker full of pee and a license to use it. I like that line.
I like that line too.
Yeah, especially if it's like a super soaker full of pee. Ew, I'll go away. I think I don't want to deal with that.
And I guess in the very end, like, who their actual mother was, like, they didn't have a mother. And it's like, okay, well,
yeah. I mean, technically, sort of. They had that one chick's eggs and used, so.
Right.
Surrogate, I guess. Yeah, she's just like, I just traded him some stuff I wasn't planning on using anyways. Oh, did you see the after credits scene?
One of the after credits scenes where he turns around, it's like...
and he's got, like, a built-on womb that he's got strapped to the front of him, and Helper's all, ooh, so excited.
Right.
Fucking love Helper when he has those hissy fits over the home speakers. Like, Helper, are you still bitter about this? He's like, just runs off.
But the thing is, like, he's acting like a proud papa with those two clones, or not those two babies, but they die. Those children that he grew in his quote unquote womb never survived. They died horribly somehow. And then he just, like the ones they have now, like the 18th clone or whatever.
Yeah, something like that.
And I don't know why they wouldn't continue the cloning process, because it's like their memory, sure, they died, but like their memories kept on getting transferred over. So it wouldn't be the same. So why not just keep it as a...
Because they killed all those clones in that one episode and just takes a long time to grow them again, I guess.
We'll do it again anyway. I mean...
I don't know if you start doing a clone when they're 17 years old. Well, I guess, they have been unaged for a long while. So
they've been doing that. And of course, I love how they never addressed. They never told that woman. She's like, "You've been here before."
Yeah, she's like, "Yeah, you keep on showing up asking about this, and I keep telling you no." But she might know though, because she does know the Venture, Rusty Venture and Jonas Venture, and might just be like, "Oh, this is probably a weird clone thing or mind wiping," because she seems pretty into the whole superhero spectrum. Having to be a spy, an invisible spy. And then take care of all those poor super pets that have been neglected and abandoned. Which that makes sense that there'd be one of those, all those poor cyborg pets that need maintenance afterwards.
Yeah, I guess you would have to deal with that. People
And like the little Beppo chimp, the Super Friends chimp. So makes me think the Super Friends probably died at one point, or the Wonder Twins. Sorry.
Yeah, well,
I assume the little blue chimp that they had was the Wonder Twins chimp.
The Wonder Twins have it coming.
Yeah. Nobody likes Wonder Twins.
Yeah, I remember there was a comic that came out a while back, and they're like, "Oh, this is gonna be a more mature look at the Wonder Twins."
Oh, yeah, I kind of vaguely remember that too.
And apparently, like the water boy, he apparently was going around trying to get water to the places in the world. So basically, he was giving himself to these people to drink. And I never read it. I didn't care. But I do remember hearing, like, back in the days of Wizard, I remember reading about it.
Yeah, that sounds like a Jesus thing. Drink of me. This is my body.
I swear.
Yeah, just some dude just shows up with a big bucket and just dumps himself into it. Drink this. I'm going to be like,
no, thank you. The Teen Titans Go version was great.
I don't remember the Teen Titans Go. Oh, kind of vaguely.
Well, they show up and they fired Beast Boy because he's Beast Boy.
Yeah,
and not necessarily because of his powers, because he's just who he is. And so they fired Beast Boy and they hold auditions, and the girl shows up and they're like, "Oh, awesome! She can change the animals."
That's right. They just constantly have the poor water dude doing like menial stuff. Or it's like, hey, turn into ice for us, make things cold or whatever.
Well, initially they were like, "We don't need you to get the fuck out," and they're like, "Oh no, I need him to change to power." So he would just stay around the building. She'd run back, and they would do their thing, and then she'd leave.
Yeah, he would just be stuck at the building, just waiting. Bummer for him.
It was also for him.
Yeah, never joined the Teen Titans Go. They're just horrible people all around.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, they don't even mince words about it. They're just bad people.
Did you ever watch the Teen Titans crossover?
Yeah, I did, but I don't remember much of it.
It was actually pretty good. It was good, but it wasn't good because there were a few times where they would go into like different iterations of the Teen Titans, and at one point in time they went to like the Young Justice, and it just didn't look. I mean, I get it. They're working with what they have. It didn't quite look right. It looked kind of what the Young Justice animation looked like, but
they're like 2/3 of the way there.
Well, they were really stiff. It was honestly, it gave me a mind of like cardboard cutouts. So,
gotcha.
But again, I do understand because that's not the animation style they were going for. I mean, they were as realistic as they were willing to go was the original Teen Titans. But even then, I remember that came out. That was like people complained it got too cartoony because like maybe Cyclops or not Cyclops. Brain fart. Help. Cyborg. Like Cyborg would be yelling, and they would get that kind of chibi style where his head turns all big, and like they would do that. I still remember people like hating on that. And then then they canceled the show, and everyone was like, "What?" And they came out Teen Titans Go, and people lost it. But I'm sorry, I like Teen Titans Go better than Teen Titans. People can come at me, but
I do too, actually, to be honest.
Now, in terms of like storyline action, yeah, no shit. Of course, if you're trying to go for pure comic book action, whatever, with like interweaving storylines, and yes, of course, the original Teen Titans was better. They really did disservice. They never really finished the whole Slade thing. It was just, I get it. But in terms of like just pure entertainment, I love the shit out of me some Teen Titans Go.
And it's also was the birth of that song, "The Night Begins to Shine," one of my personal favorite songs.
Right, and they also taught about they would teach about banking. Sometimes they would just come out and there was one episode.
Oh, yeah, they did do that. Yeah, actually, and it was actually like pretty good learning stuff too. You're like, oh, I'm 40 and I'm learning something from this. Neat.
Yeah, they did one episode where they talk about like how to for equity and like renting out stuff. Like oh yeah,
when they bought the rental building.
Yeah. Oh man, it was great.
Yeah. Yeah, it was also great seeing Orpheus in the Zardoz costume. And everybody
that was pretty funny. I almost wrote that down in my notes, but like I have taken almost no notes, but as usual. But yeah, I saw that and I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And what do you call it? He goes, "Why you want a?"
Oh, I don't remember. I wish I'd written that down though.
I want to say He-Man, but I don't think he said He-Man.
Yeah, the vampire is like, "It's a Zardoz costume."
Yeah, which I've never seen. I've never seen Zardoz. I know of it. I've seen pictures of it. I've seen, I've seen what's his face,
Sean Connery,
James Bond. Yeah, Sean Connery. Because of course they put him on the cover, which I don't know why you would do that. Like he doesn't look that good in it.
Because he sells the movie. I mean, who else is going to sell that movie? Name one other actor in it.
Well, yeah, but I wouldn't know anyway because I haven't seen the movie. They're like, oh yeah,
this is true. I don't know. Maybe Adrian Barbeau was in it or something like that. But I don't even think anybody that big was in it. I've seen it, so.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, I have.
Was there a Mystery Science Theater 3000 of it? Was there a Mystery?
I don't know. I just watched the actual real movie. I didn't watch like a riff tracks or nothing. It's not a good movie, by the way. I mean, honestly, it's not horrible. It's like all other 70s sci-fi, where it's just a lot of like slow-paced dystopian conversations about how horrible life is while they walk around in Technicolor stuff and talk about how bad the future is. And then, I don't know, nothing really happens until something happens. And that's the end of the movie. So like Family Guy sort of did that too, where it's like depressing 70s sci-fi movie. And at the end of the movie, it's like, we're the only last two people on planet. I'm a robot. Oh no. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the whole idea. Like, oh, there's two people left to populate the Earth. No, it doesn't work that way. It's
could be some inbreeding going on there.
I saw some like thing where like how many people can be left in a community for it not to be just turned into some inbreeding, like to form a successful society, and it was like 10,000. So yeah, 2 ain't gonna cut it. It's like 2 is basically like, okay, I guess we have sex till we die, and then that's it.
Hence the reason you want to make clones like Dr. Venture. Oh, I was bummed there's no Henry Killinger in this. He was one of my favorite characters.
He was pretty awesome.
Yeah, Henry Killinger just showed up and it had that fun fight with the trio of bad guys. Like the brain fight where they're having the badass lightsaber duels, but in the actuality, they're just like staring at each other.
Yeah, I tell you what, he was awesome.
Yep, with his mysterious murder bag or whatever it is. I actually have a bag that kind of looks like that I refer to it every once in a while as that.
He was so deadpan. It was amazing.
Yep. And also, he was just so great at everything he did. He showed up and he turned Dr. Venture like from a bumbling idiot all the way up to like a threat, like a real take over the world kind of threat.
Almost like
Arch?
Thank you. Jesus.
Yeah.
God damn Christ. Arch. So, Arch is kind of like Arch, but I'm almost thinking that there was kind of like those helmets had to be hypnotism or something, because without question, kill him, he's dead.
Yeah, yeah.
And they didn't even give a shit. They're like, oh yeah, they're just pawns. Like, so were they humans? Were they robots? And again, it goes to they have all these technology and stuff. Surely it's not, oh, now they're going to be part of the Guild of Calamitous Intent. It's like, okay, are they going to pull up the Guild of Calamitous Intent, or is the Guild of Calamitous Intent going to pull down Arch?
They're going to pull down Arch. They are so incompetent they'll just do it. Especially that 2-headed guy who's an idiot.
Yeah, I mean,
the 2-headed like Aleister Crowley kind of guy.
Because I thought for a minute, like for a hot minute, I thought they were going to kind of do like a commentary on even like the Senate, if you will, without going too deep into this. Where it's like it's a bunch of old people. And they need some new blood in there, so like that would be Arch would be the new blood, and they're going to change things up. And they kind of addressed that a while back with Red Death. Remember, he had this big old long, amazing speech where he tied this new whippersnapper villain to get to the train tracks. Remember that?
Yeah, I do.
He's like, "Oh, the tick, tick, tick."
Mm-hmm.
Had those watches where you tick, tick, tick. I love that voice actor, by the way. He's one
so do I. And can we talk about how amazing of a character Daisy was in this?
Oh, Daisy was great.
The freaking horse. I love the part too where she points a gun at Daisy and like sit in that chair. The horse actually gets up, like sits in it like a person. Then they tie Daisy to the chair, and then Daisy just like rips out of the ropes as soon as she needs to. Just like rip. Didn't do any good to time down.
Like, don't think about it too much. Well, it's like, is it a girl? Because it's supposed to be like that dude.
It's a robot. It's asexual, but the name is Daisy. So, and his daughter named it and probably christened it a girl horse.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, are you going to argue with a little girl's imagination? A little skeleton girl who's, you go ahead and you argue with Red Death. And also, apparently, he's in his 70s too, we learned. It's like, hey, Brock, you think you could take him? He's like, he's in his 70s.
Right. But then he admits it like he terrifies me.
Yeah, right.
They're
Yeah,
all
even though he's
scared
a
of him.
70, he's still a very terrifying man.
Well, yeah, he's a giant fucking red skull.
Yeah,
you
right.
know?
He's even more scary than the Red Skull. Red Skull just has a red skull. That guy's got red everything.
Right.
I also like the Fly reference too, where you just see the guy getting teleported out, and he's like half cockroach. He's like, "We got cockroaches in the lab again." It was when they're going through the abandoned warehouse, or not the abandoned warehouse, but the shared rent warehouse.
I mean, I know it was based on a Fly Guy, but the Fly Guy was just like, he wasn't an anti-hero. He was just, some dude. He was he's a scientist, but he made a oopsie doodle.
Yeah, well, I think, wasn't he doing like science outside the bounds of law or something like that? They're like, "Ooh, you can't do this. It's immoral."
Oh, I'm sure.
I'll experiment on myself then.
Yeah. Like,
but also, I mean, we're trying to assume that the dude in the show is actually like a 1-for-1 from the guy from The Fly. I think they're just making a teleporter joke. You're reading too deeply into this.
Granted.
Yeah. I think they just wanted to make hey, if you got a cockroach problem, you shouldn't have a teleporter in your lab. I think that was more the thing than, hey, maybe Jeff Goldblum is a bad guy deep down inside. Although we could watch that movie, see what it is. He might be a bad guy.
With The Fly?
Yeah.
I remember vague.
Actually, by the end of the movie, he did kind of turn into a bad guy because he was attacking and trying to murder people.
Well, yeah, that. I remember him like going into like, oh, I'm going to do a arm wrestling thing. And the guy's like, okay, I'll arm wrestle you. And then he breaks his fucking arm.
Yeah. And then later in the movie, he puked on the one dude's hand and melted it off and stuff. And at the very end of the movie, it was basically like a fly monster trying to kill his wife. Or no, he's trying to jam his wife into the teleporter. That's right. And turn her into a fly too.
Was that his wife or his girlfriend? It was Gina Davis.
I don't know. If they weren't married by the right religion, then they are just boyfriend and girlfriend in the eyes of God.
That's right.
So there you go. That's how I see that. If they weren't married with the proper overseeing, then boy howdy, they're just living in sin. Probably why God turned them into a fly. Yeah.
If only we were stupid enough to not do that.
We Google it, and Google just comes back like, that's a stupid question to ask. Why are you asking that? Oh, here's a fun fact. Do you know the comedian John Hodgman?
Yeah.
Yeah. He was actually one of the voices in this movie. He was the OSI soldier who is like, oh, actually in Fantastic Four issue number 7, they've launched a Baxter building into space. When all said, like the head of OSI was like, hey, we've never had an instance like this where a building gets launched into space. And one of the soldiers like, actually, in Fantastic Four. Yeah, that was John Hodgman.
Well, my question is this, like, part of, the main villains, like, she gets in there, she gets Dr. Girlfriend, and they hash it out, and everything's fine. And she's like, oh, yeah, and she hits the button to stop having that. Was this incompetence or, like, maliciousness? Did she do that with the knowledge that it was now going to plummet to Earth? And
I don't know, because, the way Dr. Girlfriend said, it was like, hey, bring that building back to Earth safely. And all she did was just turn it off and be like, well, fuck it. Because, it did kind of seem like she wanted to kill them at the end. Because, I mean, honestly, it would make sense if she did want to kill them, because then Rusty and the Monarch are out of the picture, and she can have Dr. Girlfriend all to herself. Because that was the whole thing. She had the hots for Dr. Girlfriend.
Well, right. I mean, who
still, though,
I mean, I guess you just play incompetence, like that, but that's always the rub. When things go wrong, it looks like, okay, was this incompetence or malice? And, the people who get called on that, they hate that question because that's a hateful question. That's a no-win question. Did you do this because you did it because you're cruel and you're trying to get this result? Or did you do it because you're incompetent, which is in some cases just as bad?
It's called a loaded question.
Yeah.
The way I always respond to those is I usually give them the answer that they hate the most, where I'm like, yeah, I fucked it up just to piss you off personally. And then I just stare at them for a good long while and watch them process it.
Like very,
or if they're like, hey, why'd you do this? But I'll fucking do it again too. And then just stare at them with a very serious look.
I'll do it again too.
Give them the answer they're not expecting.
Ninjas. What?
Ninjas. Yeah.
But I didn't ask anything about ninjas.
Yeah.
Look.
No, that's why jet engines get ruined, dude. Ninjas. Jet engines, ninjas. That's enough of it. If we didn't have ninjas, air flights would be way cheaper. More airplanes taken down per year due to ninjas than anything else.
My favorite thing to answer, like when people say, hey, is this going okay or whatever. I've told you this before, and I even made a sticker of it. And it's on a t-shirt. You'll see it in my shop. Anyway, It's the it's fine. If it wasn't fine, I wouldn't tell you, but it's fine.
Yeah, yep.
But again,
very true.
If it wasn't fine, I would never tell you.
Yeah, yep. That's why it's just a generic catch-all. Fine. How are things? Fine. You don't hear the words; you hear the inflection, though.
Right. The inflection is, really important. That's one thing about text people get in trouble with. Like, it's fine, where it's like, oh no, it's fine, or it's fine. Yeah. Two significantly different outcomes.
You know, it wasn't fine though when they went. Venture and the crew went to go turn off those little helper home speakers, and they go to that room. They're like, it might be a little disorienting, so be careful. And they get slammed against walls, and their whole heads start crushing, and blood is just coming out their orifices.
What was that about? Was it like the forces, like the gravity in there? Or?
Yeah, I'm guessing it's just all the sound waves and everything knocking them down, the pressure from all the sound in it. That's what I kind of got from it. But yeah, the fact it was just throwing them around like that, and Dr. Hatred pants get yanked off, all the blood in his underwear. And also once they actually get out of that room, the poor guys, all their eyes are like frozen open with all bloodshot. It's like, oh God, we have to get out of here.
Helper was so ready. He's like, I'm gonna go kill this thing.
Yeah, right. He's like, oh, I like Helper. That poor little robot. He's been through a lot, and he doesn't even know it for the most part because he keeps getting reset. At least they did at one point. They're resetting him every once in a while because he kept getting like sentient.
But I remember that one scene where he's like, "Are they sentient?"
Yeah.
Like, no, they're floating. We don't know why.
Yeah. Hey, that seems like it's a benefit. That seems like a buying perk.
It's not a bug. It's a feature.
Yeah. And also when they're talking about how they kept putting in higher quality parts and the price went up. If you look at the flyers, originally the price was $200 for one, but at the last moment they crossed that out and they marked down $990.
Yeah,
so it went from $200 to almost $1,000.
I saw $1,000, but I missed the original price.
Yep. Oh yeah. As far as good, neat touches in this movie, remember where Dean thought that he got bit by the vampire? He was, hiding his little. And it turns out it's just a vampire hunter's necklace. If you actually go back and rewatch that scene, when the vampire hunter tackles Dean, it very obviously the necklace lands right on his neck, and you hear Dean go, "Ow!" So it's actually, they actually put that in and made it. I was like, oh, hey, that's kind of a neat touch because I watched it a second time last night. However, I think they made the necklace poke him on the wrong side of the neck, though. I could be wrong on that, though.
Well, what are you gonna do?
I know what you're gonna do.
I will say this though, and then I need to preface this by saying what Dean did was fucked up. Like, it shouldn't have happened. Like, the way he did that was way wrong. That being said, like, I know this is going back to last season, not necessarily the movie, but like Hank was totally the wrong guy for that girl. Like, if you remember, like, he was goofy or whatever, and she was in a bad situation, and they like had kind of like a fun, playful stuff. But once they got out, once they escaped that initial like, hey, I'm goofy and whatever and lovable, and they actually started getting down to like school, and she's studying, and Dean was way better of a match for her. That being said, that should have been handled way differently. If anything
the girl
else,
whose dad was the mob boss, okay, cool. Just want to make sure I was completely right because all of a sudden, click in my head, it's like, oh yeah, that's who her dad was. She was not right for him.
Nope, there should have been a conversation, and if anything else,
they even touched on that in the series too, like the last season, where it's like, they're not right for each other, and she kind of left him. I think,
I mean that's the thing. Well, she didn't leave him yet. I think she was thinking about leaving, but that was her fault too. She should have dumped him. Yeah, like she said, this isn't working out and dumped him.
She wanted to piss off Daddy, though. We're probably about done talking about the Venture Brothers movie. Talk about how great it is, and if you like Venture Brothers, you need to watch it. By the way, for those of you listening, it is definitely a great way to close out the series. And again, it really leave it open so they can maybe continue it if things should ever happen.
I noticed that, like, at the very end, they reveal, like, okay, because they were like, they're brothers, but now they're like, he's a thrown away clone. Which,
and they still at the very end had him pop out and be like, yes, I'm still your arch enemy, even though that we're clones.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. That's a good, like, wrap up. And finally the guy's like, Samson's like, I'm just going to call him an Uber.
Yeah. Yep. And also, the title of the movie is kind of confusing until you get to the end, and then you realize that, yes, Radiant is the blood of the baboon heart, because that's the only difference between Dr. Venture and the Monarch, Baboon blood. I don't know if you
Sure.
caught that line. Yeah.
I did. Yeah.
Oh, you did? Okay. Where the guy's like, yeah, I told him not to put in the baboon blood because that'll just make him more aggressive. And sure enough, it seemed to.
And so, what? I guess his original thing about Venture was like he thought he stole his girlfriend. He's like, dude, I never stole your girlfriend.
Yep, that was exactly the entire rivalry was just over. He thought he stole his girlfriend way back in the day and had sex with her, but nope, didn't. He just made her invisible, or made her invisible. Yeah, didn't have sex with either of them, and just took the one lady's eggs too. So I don't know. Did he take the eggs, or did he take the whole womb?
I thought he just took the eggs.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was under the impression of. But now that I'm thinking about that little like weird cyber womb that he had, I don't know.
So did Dr. Venture ever have like a girlfriend or something, or?
Yeah, because remember he had that one crazy lady that showed up and was trying to like breastfeed the Venture boys, Hank and Dean.
Right,
she thought their girlfriend.
I think so. They had some kind of relationship.
Yeah, she was like the crazy spy lady.
Right. Which that has one of my favorite scenes with Samson, where she's like charging at him, and he just kind of like looks away from her, takes a breath, and just
pops into the car.
Yeah, he like.
Yep.
And the great thing about that was like he just closed his eyes. And he knew where his hand would need to be,
right, to hold him back and keep him from hitting the dash and everything.
Yeah.
Yep. It's like he's done that 1,000,000 times.
Let's be real. Like Samson's one of the best. Like that type of character, the bodyguard / older brother character.
And they did do a good job evolving him from just a killing machine in the first season up to being like, a real character with real thoughts and feelings and a love of Led Zeppelin by the end of it.
Right. Especially the one where he goes and takes his test for his license to kill again, and the guy who's testing him, at first he's acting like a hard ass, like, oh, he's not going to pass, and the very he's like, you used to watch me as a kid.
Yeah, right. You are a legend, Mr. Sampson. I'm going to get... And he goes back to the bar and he's like, look what I have. I got my license to kill back.
Which then he kills, like, that doesn't mean you just kill people, but apparently it does.
No, it literally means that, apparently, without any repercussions. If the cops show up, you just show them license to kill, and like, well, I guess that person deserved it.
Just take my word for it.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm having trouble thinking of anything else for this.
I guess Dr. Venture did kind of think he was dating Dr. Girlfriend for a while, even though they weren't. Because even this movie's like, hey, you want to get back together? She's like, we were never dating, dude.
Yeah, it's pretty visceral. Like, she really, really doesn't like him.
Yeah, she really doesn't, but he's got the hots for her. She's like, no, knock it off.
But she's badass, too. Like, she was full on figuring out what happened while she was still, like, let's be real, she was still in her nightwear.
Yep.
Like her lingerie, if you will.
I did actually like that scene where they called her up to the tower, and it's Brock and Shore leaving them. They're explaining to her what's going on. They're like, honey, you just have to run. And she's like, what? Just run! And they gave her a chance to get away. Because, she is a very badass character. One of the most badass in the show, actually.
Maybe one day they'll pick it back up, and I'm glad they left the door open. They
didn't do like we're going to kill them off kind of thing or make them all be friends at the end. Nope, they kind of left it to where we could have a season 9 in theory, and I like that. This is where the ending jingle goes. This is where the ending jingle goes. I don't know if we need one. I don't know if we'll get one. But if we do, then here is where it goes.